Turgeon sat in his workroom, legs sprawled out from the stool, back against and elbows on the bench. Across the room was a cage. Into this Turgeon gazed with rueful vexation. The creature in the cage returned the scrutiny with emotions beyond conjecture. It was a thing to arouse pity. A great head on a small, spindly body with weak, rheumy eyes and a flabby button of a nose. The mouth hung slackly wet. The skin glistened waxy pink. In spite of its manifest imperfection, it was to date the most successful product of Turgeon's vats. Turgeon stood up, found a bowl of pap. With a long-handled spoon he held food to the creature's mouth, but the mouth refused the spoon, and mush trickled down the glazed skin to fall on the rickety frame. Turgeon put down the bowl, stood back, and slowly returned to his stool. For a week now it had refused to eat. Did the idiotic visage conceal perception, a will to extinction? As Turgeon watched, the white-blue eyes closed, the great head slumped and bumped to the floor of the cage. The limbs relaxed. The creature was dead. Turgeon sighed and left the room. He mounted winding stone stairs and at last came out on the roof of his castle, Mir, high above the river Durna. In the west the sun hung close to old earth. Ruby shafts, heavy and rich as wine, slanted past the gnarled boles of the archaic forest to lay on the turfed forest floor. The sun sank in accordance with the old ritual. Latter-day night fell across the forest. A soft, warm darkness came swiftly, and Turgeon stood pondering the death of his latest creature. He considered its many precursors, the thing all eyes, the boneless creature with the pulsing surface of its brain exposed, the beautiful female body, whose intestines trailed out into the nutrient solution like seeking fibrils, the inverted inside-out creatures. Turgeon sighed bleakly. His methods were at fault. A fundamental element was lacking from his synthesis, a matrix ordering the components of the pattern. As he sat gazing across the darkening land, memory took Turgeon to a night of years before, when the sage had stood beside him. "In ages gone," the sage had said, his eyes fixed on a low star, "1,000 spells were known to sorcery, and the wizards effected their wills. Today, as Earth dies, 100 spells remain to man's knowledge, and these have come to us through the ancient books. But there is one called Pandaloom, who knows all the spells, all the incantations, cantraps, runes, and thaumaturgies that have ever wrenched and molded space." He had fallen silent, lost in his thoughts. "Where is this Pandaloom?" Turgeon had asked presently. "He dwells in the land of Embellion," the sage had replied. "But where this land lies, no one knows." "How does one find Pandaloom, then?" The sage had smiled faintly. "If it were ever necessary, a spell exists to take one there." Both had been silent a moment. Then the sage had spoken, staring out over the forest. "One may ask anything of Pandaloom, and Pandaloom will answer, provided that the seeker performs the service Pandaloom requires, and Pandaloom drives a hard bargain." Then the sage had shown Turgeon the spell in question, which he had discovered in an ancient portfolio and kept secret from all the world. Turgeon, remembering this conversation, descended to his study. A long, low hall with stone walls and a stone floor deadened by a thick russet rug. The tomes which held Turgeon's sorcery lay on the long table of black steel, or were thrust helter-skelter into shelves. These were volumes compiled by many wizards of the past, untidy folios collected by the sage, leather-bound librams, setting forth the syllables of 100 powerful spells, so cogent that Turgeon's brain could know but 4 at a time. Turgeon found a musty portfolio, turned the heavy pages to the spell the sage had shown him, the call to the violent cloud. He stared down at the characters, and they burned with an urgent power, pressing off the page as if frantic to leave the dark solitude of the book. Turgeon closed the book, forcing the spell back into oblivion. He robed himself with a short blue cape, tucked a blade into his belt, fitted the amulet holding Lacadel's rune to his wrist. Then he sat down, and from a journal chose the spells he would take with him. What dangers he might meet he could not know. So he selected 3 spells of general application: the excellent prismatic spray, Fandale's mantle of stealth, and the spell of the slow hour. He climbed the parapets of his castle and stood under the far stars, breathing the air of ancient earth. How many times had this air been breathed before him? What cries of pain had this air experienced? What sighs, laughs, war shouts, cries of exultation, gasps? The night was wearing on. A blue light wavered in the forest. Turgeon watched a moment, then at last squared himself and uttered the call to the violent cloud. All was quiet. Then came a whisper of movement, swelling to the roar of great winds. A wisp of white appeared and waxed to a pillar of boiling black smoke. A voice deep and harsh issued from the turbulence. "At your disturbing power is this instrument come. Whence will you go?" "4 directions, then 1, said Turgeon. "Alive must I be brought to Embellion." The cloud whirled down. Far up and away he was snatched, flung head over heels into incalculable distance. 4 directions was he thrust, then 1, and at last a great blow hurled him from the cloud, sprawled him into Embellion. Turgeon gained his feet and tottered a moment, half-dazed. His senses steadied. He looked about him. He stood on the bank of a limpid pool. Blue flowers grew about his ankles, and at his back reared a grove of tall blue-green trees, the leaves blurring on high into mist. Was Embellion of earth? The trees were earth-like, the flowers were of familiar form, the air was of the same texture. But there was an odd lack to this land, and it was difficult to determine. Perhaps it came of the horizon's curious vagueness, perhaps from the blurring quality of the air, lucent and uncertain as water. Most strange, however, was the sky, a mesh of vast ripples and cross-ripples, and these refracted 1,000 shafts of colored light, rays which in mid-air wove wondrous laces, rainbow nets, in all the jewel hues. So as Turgeon watched, there swept over him beams of claret, topaz, rich violet, radiant green. He now perceived that the colors of the flowers and the trees were but fleeting functions of the sky, for now the flowers were of salmon tint, and the trees a dreaming purple. The flowers deepened to copper, then with a suffusion of crimson warmed through maroon to scarlet, and the trees had become sea blue. "The land none knows where," said Turgeon to himself. "Have I been brought high, low, into a pre-existence, or into the afterworld?" He looked toward the horizon and thought to see a black curtain rising high into the murk, and this curtain encircled the land in all directions. The sound of galloping hooves approached. He turned to find a black horse lunging breakneck along the bank of the pool. The rider was a young woman, with black hair streaming wildly. She wore loose white breeches to the knee and a yellow cape flapping in the wind. One hand clutched the reins, the other flourished a sword. Turgeon warily stepped aside, for her mouth was tight and white as if in anger, and her eyes glowed with a peculiar frenzy. The woman hauled back on the reins, wheeled her horse high around, charged Turgeon, and struck out at him with her sword. Turgeon jumped back and whipped free his own blade. When she lunged at him again, he fended off the blow, and leaning forward touched the point to her arm and brought a drop of blood. She drew back, startled. Then up from her saddle she snatched a bow and flicked an arrow to the string. Turgeon sprang forward, dodging the wild sweep of her sword, seized her around the waist, and dragged her to the ground. She fought with a crazy violence. He had no wish to kill her, and so struggled in a manner not entirely dignified. Finally, he held her helpless, her arms pinioned behind her back. "Quiet, vixen," said Turgeon, "lest I lose patience and stun you." "Do as you please," the girl gasped. "Life and death are brothers." "Why do you seek to harm me?" demanded Turgeon. "I have given you no offense." "You are evil, like all existence." Emotion ground the delicate fibers of her throat. "If power were mine, I would crush the universe to bloody gravel and stamp it into the ultimate muck." Turgeon, in surprise, relaxed his grip, and she nearly broke loose. But he caught her again. "Tell me, where may I find Pandaloum?" The girl stilled her exertion, twisted her head to stare at Turgeon. Then, "Search all Embellion. I will assist you not at all." If she were more amiable, thought Turgeon, she would be a creature of remarkable beauty. "Tell me where I may find Pandaloum," said Turgeon, "else I find other uses for you." She was silent for a moment, her eyes blazing with madness. Then she spoke in a vibrant voice. "Pandaloum dwells beside the stream only a few paces distant." Turgeon released her, but he took her sword and bow. "If I return these to you, will you go your way in peace?" For a moment she glared. Then, without words, she mounted her horse and rode off through the trees. Turgeon watched her disappear through the shafts of jewel colors, then went in the direction she had indicated. Soon he came to a long, low manse of red stone backed by dark trees. As he approached, the door swung open. Turgeon halted in mid-stride. "Enter," came a voice. "Enter, Turgeon of Myr." So Turgeon wonderingly entered the manse of Pandaloum. He found himself in a tapestried chamber, bare of furnishing save a single settee. No one came to greet him. A closed door stood at the opposite wall, and Turgeon went to pass through, thinking perhaps it was expected of him. "Halt, Turgeon," spoke the voice. "No one may gaze on Pandaloum. It is the law." Turgeon, standing in the middle of the room, spoke to his unseen host. "This is my mission, Pandaloum," he said. "For some time I have been striving to create humanity in my vats. Yet always I fail, from ignorance of the agent that binds and orders the patterns. This master matrix must be known to you, therefore I come to you for guidance." "Willingly will I aid you," said Pandaloum. "There is, however, another aspect involved. The universe is methodized by symmetry and balance. In every aspect of existence is this equipoise observed. Consequently, even in the trivial scope of our dealings, this equivalence must be maintained. Thus and thus. I agree to assist you. In return, you perform a service of equal value for me. When you have completed this small work, I will instruct and guide you to your complete satisfaction." "What may this service be?" inquired Turgeon. "A man lives in the land of Ascalé, not far from your castle Myr. About his neck hangs an amulet of carved blue stone. This you must take from him and bring to me." Turgeon considered a moment. "Very well," he said. "I will do what I can. Who is the man?" Pandaloum answered in a soft voice. "Prince Candive, the Golden." "Ah," exclaimed Turgeon ruefully, "you have gone to no pains to make my task a pleasant one, but I will fulfill your requirement as best I can." "Good," said Pandaloum. "Now I must instruct you. Candive wears this amulet hidden below his singlet. When an enemy appears, he takes it out to display on his chest. Such is the potency of the charm. No matter what else, do not gaze on this amulet, either before or after you take it, on pain of most hideous consequence." "I understand," said Turgeon. "I will obey. Now there is a question I would ask, providing the answer will not involve me in an undertaking to bring the moon back to Earth, or recover an elixir you inadvertently spilled in the sea." Pendulum laughed loud. "Ask on," he responded, "and I will answer." Turgeon put his question. "As I approached your dwelling, a woman of insane fury wished to kill me. This I would not permit, and she departed in rage. Who is this woman, and why is she thus?" Pendulum's voice was amused. "I, too," he replied, "have vats where I mold life into varied forms. This girl, Thais, I created, but I wrought carelessly, with a flaw in the synthesis. So she climbed from the vat with a warp in her brain. In this manner, what we hold to be beautiful seems to her loathsome and ugly, and what we find ugly is to her intolerably vile, in a degree that you and I cannot understand. She finds the world a bitter place, peopled with shapes of direst malevolence." "So this is the answer," Turgeon murmured. "Pitiable wretch." "Now," said Pendulum, "you must be on your way to Cain. The auspices are good. In a moment open this door, enter, and move to the pattern of runes on the floor." Turgeon performed as he was bid. He found the next room to be circular and high-domed, with the varying lights of Embellion pouring down through sky transparencies. When he stood upon the pattern in the floor, Pendulum spoke again. "Now close your eyes, for I must enter and touch you. Heed well, do not try to glimpse me." Turgeon closed his eyes. Presently a step sounded behind him. "Extend your hand," said the voice. Turgeon did so, and felt a hard object placed therein. "When your mission is accomplished, crush this crystal, and at once you will find yourself in this room." A cold hand was laid on his shoulder. "An instant you will sleep," said Pendulum. "When you awake, you will be in the city Cain." The hand departed. A dimness came over Turgeon as he stood awaiting the passage. The air had suddenly become full of sound, clattering, a tinkling of many small bells, music, voices. Turgeon frowned, pursed his lips. A strange tumult for the austere home of Pendulum. A woman's voice sounded close by. "Look, O sentinel, see the man-owl who closes his eyes to merriment." There was a man's laughter, suddenly hushed. "Come. The fellow is bereft and possibly violent. Come." Turgeon hesitated, then opened his eyes. It was night in white-walled Cain, and festival time. Orange lanterns floated in the air, moving as the breeze took them. From the balconies dangled flower chains and cages of blue fireflies. The streets surged with the wine-flushed populace, costumed in a multitude of bizarre modes. Here was a Melantine bargeman, here a warrior of Valderon's Green Legion, here another of ancient times wearing one of the old helmets. In a little cleared space, a garlanded courtesan of the code-chic literal danced the dance of the 14 silken movements to the music of flutes. In the shadow of a balcony, a girl barbarian of East Almery embraced a man blackened and in leather harness as a deodand of the forest. They were gay, these people of waning earth, feverishly merry, for infinite night was close at hand when the red sun should finally flicker and go black. Turgeon melted into the throng. At a tavern he refreshed himself with biscuits and wine, then he made for the palace of Candive the Golden. The palace loomed before him, every window and balcony aglow with light. Among the lords of the city there was feasting and revelry. If Prince Candive were flushed with drink and unwary, reflected Turgeon, the task should not be too difficult. Yet, entering boldly, he might be recognized, for he was known to many in Caen. So, uttering Fandale's mantle of stealth, he faded from the sight of all men. Through the arcade he slipped into the grand salon, where the lords of Caen made merry like the throngs of the street. Turgeon threaded the rainbow of silk, velour, sateen, watching the play with amusement. On a terrace, some stood looking into a sunken pool where a pair of captured deodans, their skins like oiled jet, paddled and glared. Others tossed darts at the spread-eagled body of a young cobalt mountain witch. In alcoves, beflowered girls offered synthetic love to wheezing old men, and elsewhere others lay stupefied by dream powders. Nowhere did Turgeon find Prince Candive. Through the palace he wandered, room after room, until at last in an upper chamber he came upon the tall, golden-bearded prince, lolling on a couch with a masked girl-child who had green eyes and hair dyed pale green. Some intuition, or perhaps a charm, warned Candive when Turgeon slipped through the purple hangings. Candive leapt to his feet. "Go!" he ordered the girl. "Out of the room quickly. Mischief moves somewhere near, and I must blast it with magic." The girl ran hastily from the chamber. Candive's hand stole to his throat and pulled forth the hidden amulet. But Turgeon shielded his gaze with his hand. Candive uttered a powerful charm which loosened space free of all warp, so Turgeon's spell was void, and he became visible. "Turgeon of Mere skulks through my palace," snarled Candive. "With ready death on my lips," spoke Turgeon. "Turn your back, Candive, or I speak a spell and run you through with my sword." Candive made as if to obey, but instead shouted the syllables bringing the omnipotent sphere about him. "Now I call my guards, Turgeon," announced Candive contemptuously, "and you shall be cast to the deodans in the tank." Candive did not know the engraved band Turgeon wore on his wrist, a most powerful rune, maintaining a field solvent of all magic. Still guarding his vision against the amulet, Turgeon stepped through the sphere. Candive's great blue eyes bulged. "Call the guards," said Turgeon. "They will find your body riddled by lines of fire." "Your body, Turgeon!" cried the prince, babbling the spell. Instantly, the blazing wires of the excellent prismatic spray lashed from all directions at Turgeon. Candive watched the furious rain with a wolfish grin, but his expression changed quickly to consternation. A finger's breadth from Turgeon's skin, the fire darts dissolved into 1,000 gray puffs of smoke. "Turn your back, Candive," Turgeon ordered. "Your magic is useless against Lacadel's rune." But Candive took a step toward a spring in the wall. "Halt!" cried Turgeon. "One more step, and the spray splits you 1,000-fold." Candive stopped short. In helpless rage he turned his back, and Turgeon, stepping forward quickly, reached over Candive's neck, seized the amulet, and raised it free. It crawled in his hand, and through the fingers there passed a glimpse of blue. A daze shook his brain, and for an instant he heard a murmur of avid voices. His vision cleared. He backed away from Candive, stuffing the amulet in his pouch. Candive asked, "May I now turn about in safety?" "When you wish," responded Turgeon, clasping his pouch. Candive, seeing Turgeon occupied, negligently stepped to the wall and placed his hand on a spring. "Turgeon," he said, "you are lost. Before you may utter a syllable, I will open the floor and drop you a great dark distance. Can your charms avail against this?" Turgeon halted in mid-motion, fixed his eyes upon Candive's red and gold face. Then he dropped his eyes sheepishly. "Ah, Candive," he fretted, "you have outwitted me. If I return you the amulet, may I go free?" "Toss the amulet at my feet," said Candive, gloating. "Also Lacadel's rune. Then I shall decide what mercy to grant you." "Even the rune?" Turgeon asked, forcing a piteous note to his voice. "Or your life?" Turgeon reached into his pouch and grasped the crystal Pandaloum had given him. He pulled it forth and held it against the pommel of his sword. "Ho, Candive," he said, "I have discerned your trick. You merely wish to frighten me into surrender. I defy you." Candive shrugged. "Die, then." He pushed the spring. The floor jerked open, and Turgeon disappeared into the gulf. But when Candive raced below to claim Turgeon's body, he found no trace, and he spent the rest of the night in temper, brooding over wine. Turgeon found himself in the circular room of Pandaloum's manse. Embellion's many-colored lights streamed through the sky windows upon his shoulder, sapphire blue, the yellow of marigolds, blood red. There was silence through the house. Turgeon moved away from the rune in the floor, glancing uneasily to the door, fearful lest Pandaloum, unaware of his presence, enter the room. "Pandaloum!" he called. "I have returned!" There was no response. Deep quiet held the house. Turgeon wished he were in the open air where the odor of sorcery was less strong. He looked at the doors. One led to the entrance hall, the other he knew not where. The door on the right hand must lead outside. He laid his hand on the latch to pull it open, but he paused. Suppose he were mistaken and Pandaloum's form were revealed. Would it be wiser to wait here? A solution occurred to him. His back to the door, he swung it open. "Pandaloum!" he called. A soft, intermittent sound came to his ears from behind, and he seemed to hear a labored breath. Suddenly frightened, Turgeon stepped back into the circular room and closed the door. He resigned himself to patience and sat on the floor. A gasping cry came from the next room. Turgeon leapt to his feet. "Turgeon, you are there?" "Yes, I have returned with the amulet." "Do this quickly," panted the voice. "Guarding your sight, hand the amulet over your neck and enter." Turgeon, spurred by the urgency of the voice, closed his eyes and arranged the amulet on his chest. He groped to the door and flung it wide. Silence of a shocked intensity held an instant. Then came an appalling screech, so wild and demoniac that Turgeon's brain sang. Mighty pinions buffeted the air. There was a hiss and the scrape of metal. Then, amidst muffled roaring, an icy wind bit Turgeon's face. Another hiss, and all was quiet. "My gratitude is yours," said the calm voice of Pandaloum. "Few times have I experienced such dire stress, and without your aid might not have repulsed that creature of hell." A hand lifted the amulet from Turgeon's neck. After a moment of silence, Pandaloum's voice sounded again from a distance. "You may open your eyes." Turgeon did so. He was in Pandaloum's workroom. Amidst much else he saw vats like his own. "I will not thank you," said Pandaloum, "but in order that a fitting symmetry be maintained, I perform a service for a service. I will not only guide your hands as you work among the vats, but also I will teach you other matters of value." In this fashion did Turgeon enter his apprenticeship to Pandaloum. Day and far into the opalescent Embellion night, he worked under Pandaloum's unseen tutelage. He learned the secret of renewed youth, many spells of the ancients, and a strange abstract lore that Pandaloum termed mathematics. Within this instrument, said Pandaloom, resides the universe. Passive in itself and not of sorcery, it elucidates every problem, each phase of existence, all the secrets of time and space. Your spells and runes are built upon its power and codified according to a great underlying mosaic of magic. The design of this mosaic we cannot surmise. Our knowledge is didactic, empirical, arbitrary. Fandale glimpsed the pattern, and so was able to formulate many of the spells which bear his name. I have endeavored through the ages to break the clouded glass, but so far my research has failed. He who discovers the pattern will know all of sorcery and be a man powerful beyond comprehension. Sir Turgeon applied himself to the study and learned many of the simpler routines. I find herein a wonderful beauty, he told Pandaloom. This is no science. This is art, where equations fall away to elements like resolving chords, and where always prevails a symmetry, either explicit or multiplex, but always of a crystalline serenity. In spite of these other studies, Turgeon spent most of his time at the vats, and under Pandaloom's guidance achieved the mastery he sought. As a recreation, he formed a girl of exotic design, whom he named Florial. The hair of the girl he had found with Candive on the night of the festival had fixed in his mind, and he gave his creature pale green hair. She had skin of creamy tan and wide emerald eyes. Turgeon was intoxicated with delight when he brought her wet and perfect from the vat. She learned quickly, and soon knew how to speak with Turgeon. She was one of dreamy and wistful habit, caring for little but wandering among the flowers of the meadow or sitting silently by the river. Yet she was a pleasant creature, and her gentle manners amused Turgeon. But one day the black-haired Sais came riding past on her horse, steely-eyed, slashing at flowers with her sword. The innocent Florial wandered by, and Sais, exclaiming, "Green-eyed woman, your aspect horrifies me. It is death for you," cut her down, as she had the flowers in her path. Turgeon, hearing the hooves, came from the workroom in time to witness the sword play. He paled in rage, and a spell of twisting torment rose to his lips. Then Sais looked at him and cursed him, and in the pale face and dark eyes he saw her misery, and the spirit that caused her to defy her fate and hold to her life. Many emotions fought in him, but at last he permitted Sais to ride on. He buried Florial by the river bank, and tried to forget her in intense study. A few days later he raised his head from his work. "Pandaloom, are you near?" "What do you wish, Turgeon?" "You mentioned that when you made Sais, a flaw warped her brain. Now I would create one like her, of the same intensity, yet sound of mind and spirit." "As you will," replied Pandaloom indifferently, and gave Turgeon the pattern. So Turgeon built a sister to Sais, and day by day watched the same slender body, the same proud features, take form. When her time came and she sat up in her vat, eyes glowing with joyful life, Turgeon was breathless in haste to help her forth. She stood before him wet and naked, a twin to Sais. But where the face of Sais was racked by hate, here dwelt peace and merriment. Where the eyes of Sais glowed with fury, here shone the stars of imagination. Turgeon stood wondering at the perfection of his own creation. "Your name shall be Tsain," said he, "and already I know that you will be part of my life." He abandoned all else to teach Tsain, and she learned with marvelous speed. "Presently we return to earth," he told her, "to my home beside a great river in the green land of Ascalé." "Is the sky of earth filled with colors?" she inquired. "No," he replied. "The sky of earth is a fathomless dark blue, and an ancient red sun rides across the sky. When night falls, the stars appear in patterns that I will teach you. Embellion is beautiful, but earth is wide, and the horizons extend far off into mystery. As soon as Pandaloon wills, we return to earth." Tsayin loved to swim in the river, and sometimes Turgeon came down to splash her and toss rocks in the water while he dreamed. Against Tsais he had warned her, and she had promised to be wary. But one day, as Turgeon made preparations for departure, she wandered far afield through the meadows, mindful only of the colors at play in the sky, the majesty of the tall, blurred trees, the changing flowers at her feet. She looked on the world with a wonder that is only for those new from the vats. Across several low hills she wandered, and through a dark forest where she found a cold brook. She drank and sauntered along the bank, and presently came upon a small dwelling. The door being open, Tsayin looked in to see who might live here. But the house was vacant, and the only furnishings were a neat pallet of grass, a table with a basket of nuts, a shelf with a few articles of wood and pewter. Tsayin turned to go on her way, but at this moment she heard the ominous thud of hooves, sweeping close like fate. The black horse slid to a stop before her. Tsayin shrank back in the doorway, all Turgeon's warnings returning to her mind. But Tsais had dismounted and came forward with her sword ready. As she raised to strike, their eyes met, and Tsais halted in wonder. It was a sight to excite the brain. The beautiful twins wearing the same white waist-high breeches, with the same intense eyes and careless hair, the same slim, pale bodies. The one wearing on her face hate for every atom of the universe, the other a gay exuberance. Tsais found her voice. "How is this, witch? You bear my semblance, yet you are not me. Or has the boon of madness come at last to dim my sight of the world?" Tsayin shook her head. "I am Tsayin. You are my twin, Tsais, my sister. For this I must love you, and you must love me." "Love? I love nothing. I will kill you and so make the world better by one less evil." She raised her sword again. "No!" cried Tsayin in anguish. "Why do you wish to harm me? I have done no wrong." "You do wrong by existing, and you offend me by coming to mock my own hideous mold." Tsayin laughed. "Hideous? No. I am beautiful, for Turgeon says so. Therefore you are beautiful too." Tsais' face was like marble. "You make sport of me." "Never. You are indeed very beautiful." Tsais dropped the point of her sword to the ground. Her face relaxed into thought. "Beauty? What is beauty? Can it be that I am blind? That a fiend distorts my vision? Tell me, how does one see beauty?" "I don't know," said Tsayin. "It seems very plain to me. Is not the play of colors across the sky beautiful?" Tsais looked up in astonishment. "The harsh glarings? They are either angry or dreary, in either case detestable. See how delicate are the flowers, fragile and charming? They are parasites. They smell vilely." Tsayin was puzzled. "I do not know how to explain beauty. You seem to find joy in nothing. Does nothing give you satisfaction?" "Only killing and destruction. So then these must be beautiful." Tsayin frowned. "I would term these evil concepts." "Do you believe so?" "I am sure of it." Tsais considered. "How can I know how to act? I have been certain, and now you tell me that I do evil." Sain shrugged. "I have lived little, and I am not wise. Yet I know that everyone is entitled to life. Turgeon could explain to you easily." "Who is Turgeon?" inquired Sais. "He is a very good man," replied Sain, "and I love him greatly. Soon we go to Earth, where the sky is vast and deep and of dark blue." "Earth? If I went to Earth, could I also find beauty and love?" "That may be, for you have a brain to understand beauty, and beauty of your own to attract love." "Then I kill no more, regardless of what wickedness I see. I will ask Pandaloom to send me to Earth." Sain stepped forward, put her arms around Sais, and kissed her. "You are my sister, and I will love you." Sais' face froze. "Rend, stab, bite," said her brain. But a deeper surge welled up from her flowing blood, from every cell of her body, to suffuse her with a sudden flush of pleasure. She smiled. "Then, I love you, my sister. I kill no more, and I will find and know beauty on earth or die." Thais mounted her horse and set out for Earth, seeking love and beauty. Sain stood in the doorway, watching her sister ride off through the colors. Behind her came a shout, and Turgeon approached. "Sain, has that frenzied witch harmed you?" He did not wait for a reply. "Enough! I kill her with a spell that she may wreak no more pain." He turned to voice a terrible charm of fire, but Sain put her hand to his mouth. "No, Turgeon, you must not. She has promised to kill no more. She goes to Earth seeking what she may not find in Embelyan." So Turgeon and Sain watched Sais disappear across the many-colored meadow. "Turgeon," spoke Sain, "what is your wish?" "When we come to Earth, will you find me a black horse like that of Sais?" "Indeed," said Turgeon, laughing, as they started back to the house of Pandaloom. Chapter 2. Mazirian the Magician. Deep in thought, Mazirian the Magician walked his garden. Trees fruited with many intoxications overhung his path, and flowers bowed obsequiously as he passed. An inch above the ground, dull as agates, the eyes of mandrakes followed the tread of his black-slippered feet. Such was Mazirian's garden, 3 terraces growing with strange and wonderful vegetations. Certain plants swam with changing iridescences. Others held up blooms pulsing like sea anemones, purple, green, lilac, pink, yellow. Here grew trees like feather parasols, trees with transparent trunks threaded with red and yellow veins, trees with foliage like metal foil, each leaf a different metal: copper, silver, blue tantalum, bronze, green iridium. Here blooms like bubbles tugged gently upward from glazed green leaves. There a shrub bore 1,000 pipe-shaped blossoms, each whistling softly to make music of the ancient earth, of the ruby-red sunlight, water seeping through black soil, the languid winds. And beyond the roquil hedge, the trees of the forest made a tall wall of mystery. In this waning hour of Earth's life, no man could count himself familiar with the glens, the glades, the dells and deeps, the secluded clearings, the ruined pavilions, the sun-dappled pleasances, the gullies and heights, the various brooks, freshets, ponds, the meadows, thickets, brakes, and rocky outcrops. Mazirian paced his garden with a brow frowning in thought. His step was slow and his arms were clenched behind his back. There was one who had brought him puzzlement, doubt, and a great desire. a delightful woman-creature who dwelt in the woods. She came to his garden half laughing and always wary, riding a black horse with eyes like golden crystals. Many times had Mazirian tried to take her. Always her horse had borne her from his varied enticements, threats, and subterfuges. Agonized screaming jarred the garden. Mazirian, hastening his step, found a mole chewing the stalk of a plant animal hybrid. He killed the marauder, and the screams subsided to a dull gasping. Mazirian stroked a furry leaf, and the red mouth hissed in pleasure. Then, spoke the plant. Mazirian stooped, held the rodent to the red mouth. The mouth suckled. The small body slid into the stomach bladder underground. The plant gurgled, eructated, and Mazirian watched with satisfaction. The sun had swung low in the sky, so dim and red that the stars could be seen, and now Mazirian felt a watching presence. It would be the woman of the forest, for thus had she disturbed him before. He paused in his stride, feeling for the direction of the gaze. He shouted a spell of immobilization. Behind him the plant animal froze to rigidity, and a great green moth wafted to the ground. He whirled around. There she was, at the edge of the forest, closer than ever she had approached before. Nor did she move as he advanced. Mazirian's young old eyes shone. He would take her to his manse and keep her in a prison of green glass. He would test her brain with fire, with cold, with pain, and with joy. She should serve him with wine and make the 18 motions of allurement by yellow lamplight. Perhaps she was spying on him. If so, the magician would discover immediately, for he could call no man friend, and had forever to guard his garden. She was but 20 paces distant. Then there was a thud and pound of black hooves as she wheeled her mount and fled into the forest. The magician flung down his cloak in rage. She held a guard, a counterspell, a rune of protection, and always she came when he was ill-prepared to follow. He peered into the murky depths, glimpsed the wanness of her body flitting through a shaft of red light, then black shade, and she was gone. Was she a witch? Did she come of her own volition, or, more likely, had an enemy sent her to deal him inquietude? If so, who might be guarding her? There was Prince Candive the Golden of Cain, whom Mazirian had bilked of his secret of renewed youth. There was Asvan the astronomer. There was Turgeon, hardly Turgeon. And here Mazirian's face lit in a pleasing recollection. He put the thought aside. Asvan, at least, he could test. He turned his steps to his workshop, went to a table where rested a cube of clear crystal, shimmering with a red and blue aureole. From a cabinet he brought a bronze gong and a silver hammer. He tapped on the gong, and the mellow tone sang through the room and out, away and beyond. He tapped again and again. Suddenly, Asvan's face shone from the crystal, beaded with pain and great terror. "Stay the strokes, Mazirian!" cried Asvan. "Strike no more on the gong of my life!" Mazirian paused, his hand poised over the gong. "Do you spy on me, Asvan? Do you send a woman to regain the gong?" "Not I, master, not I. I fear you too well." "You must deliver me the woman, Asvan. I insist." "Impossible, master. I know not who or what she is." Mazirian made as if to strike. Asvan poured forth such a torrent of supplication that Mazirian, with a gesture of disgust, threw down the hammer and restored the gong to its place. Asvan's face drifted slowly away, and the fine cube of crystal shone blank as before. Mazirian stroked his chin. Apparently he must capture the girl himself. Later, when black night lay across the forest, he would seek through his books for spells to guard him through the unpredictable glades. They would be poignant, corrosive spells, of such a nature that one would daunt the brain of an ordinary man, and two render him mad. Mazirian, by dint of stringent exercise, could encompass 4 of the most formidable, or 6 of the lesser spells. He put the project from his mind, and went to a long vat, bathed in a flood of green light. Under a wash of clear fluid lay the body of a man, ghastly below the green glare, but of great physical beauty. His torso tapered from wide shoulders through lean flanks to long, strong legs and arched feet. His face was clean and cold, with hard, flat features. Dusty golden hair clung about his head. Mazirian stared at the thing, which he had cultivated from a single cell. It needed only intelligence, and this he knew not how to provide. Turgeon of Myr held the knowledge, and Turgeon, Mazirian glanced with a grim narrowing of the eyes at a trap in the floor, refused to part with his secret. Mazirian pondered the creature in the vat. It was a perfect body. Therefore might not the brain be ordered and pliant? He would discover. He set in motion a device to draw off the liquid, and presently the body lay stark to the direct rays. Mazirian injected a minimum of drug into the neck. The body twitched. The eyes opened, winced in the glare. Mazirian turned away the projector. Feebly the creature in the vat moved its arms and feet, as if unaware of their use. Mazirian watched intently. Perhaps he had stumbled on the right synthesis for the brain. "Sit up," commanded the magician. The creature fixed its eyes upon him, and reflexes joined muscle to muscle. It gave a throaty roar and sprang from the vat at Mazirian's throat. In spite of Mazirian's strength, it caught him and shook him like a doll. For all Mazirian's magic, he was helpless. The mesmeric spell had been expended, and he had none other in his brain. In any event, he could not have uttered the space-twisting syllables with that mindless clutch at his throat. His hand closed on the neck of a leaden carboy. He swung and struck the head of his creature, which slumped to the floor. Mazirian, not entirely dissatisfied, studied the glistening body at his feet. The spinal coordination had functioned well. At his table he mixed a white potion, and, lifting the golden head, poured the fluid into the lax mouth. The creature stirred, opened its eyes, propped itself on its elbows. The madness had left its face. But Mazirian sought in vain for the glimmer of intelligence. The eyes were as vacant as those of a lizard. The magician shook his head in annoyance. He went to the window, and his brooding profile was cut black against the oval panes. Turgeon once more? Under the most dire inquiry, Turgeon had kept his secret close. Mazirian's thin mouth curved wryly. Perhaps if he inserted another angle in the passage. The sun had gone from the sky, and there was dimness in Mazirian's garden. His white night blossoms opened, and their captive gray moths fluttered from bloom to bloom. Mazirian pulled open the trap in the floor and descended stone stairs. Down, down, down. At last a passage intercepted at right angles, lit with the yellow light of eternal lamps. To the left were his fungus beds. To the right a stout oak and iron door, locked with 3 locks. Down and ahead the stone steps continued, dropping into blackness. Mazirian unlocked the 3 locks, flung wide the door. The room within was bare except for a stone pedestal supporting a glass-topped box. The box measured a yard on a side and was 4 or 5 inches high. Within the box, actually a squared passageway, a run with 4 right angles, moved to 2 small creatures, one seeking, the other evading. The predator was a small dragon with furious red eyes and a monstrous fanged mouth. It waddled along the passage on 6 splayed legs, twitching its tail as it went. The other stood only half the size of the dragon. a strong-featured man, stark naked, with a copper fillet binding his long black hair. He moved slightly faster than his pursuer, which still kept relentless chase, using a measure of craft, speeding, doubling back, lurking at the angle in case the man should unwarily step around. By holding himself continually alert, the man was able to stay beyond the reach of the fangs. The man was Turgeon, whom Mazirian by trickery had captured several weeks before, reduced in size, and thus imprisoned. Mazirian watched with pleasure as the reptile sprang upon the momentarily relaxing man, who jerked himself clear by the thickness of his skin. It was time, Mazirian thought, to give both rest and nourishment. He dropped panels across the passage, separating it into halves, isolating man from beast. To both he gave meat and pannikins of water. Turgeon slumped in the passage. "Ah," said Mazirian, "you are fatigued. You desire rest?" Turgeon remained silent, his eyes closed. Time and the world had lost meaning for him. The only realities were the gray passage and the interminable flight. At unknown intervals came food and a few hours' rest. "Think of the blue sky," said Mazirian. "The white stars. Your castle Mir by the river Durna. Think of wandering free in the meadows." The muscles at Turgeon's mouth twitched. "Consider, you might crush the little dragon under your heel." Turgeon looked up. "I would prefer to crush your neck, Mazirian." Mazirian was unperturbed. "Tell me, how do you invest your vat creatures with intelligence? Speak and you go free." Turgeon laughed, and there was madness in his laughter. "Tell you? And then? You would kill me with hot oil in a moment." Mazirian's thin mouth drooped petulantly. "Wretched man, I know how to make you speak. If your mouth were stuffed, waxed, and sealed, you would speak. Tomorrow I take a nerve from your arm and draw coarse cloth along its length." The small Turgeon, sitting with his legs across the passageway, drank his water and said nothing. "Tonight," said Mazirian with studied malevolence, "I add an angle and change your run to a pentagon." Turgeon paused and looked up through the glass cover at his enemy. Then he slowly sipped his water. With 5 angles, there would be less time to evade the charge of the monster, less of the hall in view from one angle. "Tomorrow," said Mazirian, "you will need all your agility." But another matter occurred to him. He eyed Turgeon speculatively. "Yet even this I spare you if you assist me with another problem." "What is your difficulty, febrile magician?" "The image of a woman creature haunts my brain, and I would capture her." Mazirian's eyes went misty at the thought. "Late afternoon she comes to the edge of my garden riding a great black horse. You know her, Turgeon?" "Not I, Mazirian." Turgeon sipped his water. Mazirian continued, "She has sorcery enough to ward away Falugin's second hypnotic spell. Or perhaps she has some protective rune. When I approach, she flees into the forest." "So then?" asked Turgeon, nibbling the meat Mazirian had provided. "Who may this woman be?" demanded Mazirian, peering down his long nose at the tiny captive. "How can I say?" "I must capture her," said Mazirian abstractedly. "What spells? What spells?" Turgeon looked up, although he could see the magician only indistinctly through the cover of glass. "Release me, Mazirian, and on my word as a chosen hierarch of the Maramor, I will deliver you this girl." "How would you do this?" asked the suspicious Mazirian. "Pursue her into the forest with my best live boots and a head full of spells?" "You would fare no better than I," retorted the magician, I give you freedom when I know the synthesis of your vat things. I myself will pursue the woman."
Turgeon lowered his head that the magician might not read his eyes.
"And as for me, Mazirian?"
he inquired after a moment.
"I will treat with you when I return."
"And if you do not return?"
Mazirian stroked his chin and smiled, revealing fine white teeth. "The dragon could devour you now, if it were not for your cursed secret."
The magician climbed the stairs. Midnight found him in his study, poring through leather-bound tomes and untidy portfolios. At one time 1,000 or more runes, spells, incantations, curses, and sorceries had been known. The reach of Grand Mothalam, Ascalay, the Ide of Kochik, Almeri to the south, the land of the falling wall to the east, swarmed with sorcerers of every description, of whom the chief was the arch-necromancer Fandale. 100 spells Fandale personally had formulated, though rumor said that demons whispered at his ear when he wrought magic. Ponticilla the Pious, then ruler of Grand Mothalam, put Fandale to torment, and after a terrible night he killed Fandale and outlawed sorcery throughout the land. The wizards of Grand Mothalam fled like beetles under a strong light. The lore was dispersed and forgotten, until now. At this dim time, with the sun dark, wilderness obscuring Ascalay, and the white city of Cain half in ruins, only a few more than 100 spells remained to the knowledge of man. Of these, Mazirian had access to 73, and gradually by stratagem and negotiation was securing the others. Mazirian made a selection from his books and with great effort forced 5 spells upon his brain. Fandale's Gyrator, Philogen's second hypnotic spell, the excellent prismatic spray, the charm of untiring nourishment, and the spell of omnipotent sphere. This accomplished, Mazirian drank wine and retired to his couch. The following day, when the sun hung low, Mazirian went to walk in his garden. He had but short time to wait. As he loosened the earth at the roots of his moon geraniums, a soft rustle and stamp told that the object of his desire had appeared. She sat upright in the saddle, a young woman of exquisite configuration. Mazirian slowly stooped, as not to startle her, put his feet into the live boots and secured them above the knee. He stood up. "Ho, girl," he cried. "You have come again. Why are you here of evenings? Do you admire the roses? They are vividly red because live red blood flows in their petals. If today you do not flee, I will make you the gift of one." Mazirian plucked the rose from the shuddering bush and advanced toward her, fighting the surge of the live boots. He had taken but 4 steps when the woman dug her knees into the ribs of her mount and so plunged off through the trees. Mazirian allowed full scope to the life in his boots. They gave a great bound, and another, and he was off in full chase. So Mazirian entered the forest of fable. On all sides mossy boles twisted up to support the high panoply of leaves. At intervals, shafts of sunshine drifted through to lay carmine blots on the turf. In the shade, long-stemmed flowers and fragile fungi sprang from the humus. In this ebbing hour of earth, nature was mild and relaxed. Mazirian, in his live boots, bounded with great speed through the forest, yet the black horse, running with no strain, stayed easily ahead. For several leagues the woman rode, her hair flying behind like a pennon. She looked back, and Mazirian saw the face over her shoulder as a face in a dream. Then she bent forward. The golden-eyed horse thundered ahead, and soon was lost to sight. Mazirian followed by tracing the trail in the sod. The spring and drive began to leave the live boots, for they had come far and at great speed. The monstrous leaps became shorter and heavier, But the strides of the horse, shown by the tracks, were also shorter and slower. Presently Mazirian entered a meadow, and saw the horse riderless cropping grass. He stopped short. The entire expanse of tender herbage lay before him. The trail of the horse leading into the glade was clear, but there was no trail leaving. The woman therefore had dismounted somewhere behind. How far, he had no means of knowing. He walked toward the horse, but the creature shied and bolted through the trees. Mazirian made one effort to follow, and discovered that his boots hung lax and flaccid. Dead. He kicked them away, cursing the day and his ill fortune. Shaking the cloak free behind him, a baleful tension shining on his face, he started back along the trail. In this section of the forest, outcroppings of black and green rock, basalt and serpentine, were frequent, forerunners of the crags over the river Durna. On one of these rocks, Mazirian saw a tiny man-thing mounted on a dragonfly. He had skin of a greenish cast. He wore a gauzy smock and carried a lance twice his own length. Mazirian stopped. The Twickman looked down stolidly. "Have you seen a woman of my race passing by, Twickman?"
"I have seen such a woman,"
responded the Twickman after a moment of deliberation.
"Where may she be found?"
"What may I expect for the information?"
"Salt. As much as you can bear away."
The Twickman flourished his lance.
"Salt? No. Liane the Wayfarer provides the chieftain Dandiflora's salt for all the tribe."
Mazirian could surmise the services for which the bandit troubadour paid salt. The Twickmen, flying fast on their dragonflies, saw all that happened in the forest.
"A vial of oil from my Telanxus blooms?"
"Good,"
said the Twickman.
"Show me the vial."
Mazirian did so.
"She left the trail at the lightning-blasted oak lying a little before you. She made directly for the river valley, the shortest route to the lake."
Mazirian laid the vial beside the dragonfly and went off toward the river oak. The Twickman watched him go, then dismounted and lashed the vial to the underside of the dragonfly, next to the skein of fine haft the woman had given him thus to direct Mazirian. The magician turned at the oak and soon discovered the trail over the dead leaves. A long open glade lay before him, sloping gently to the river. Trees towered to either side, and the long sundown rays steeped one side in blood, left the other deep in black shadow. So deep was the shade that Mazirian did not see the creature seated on a fallen tree, and he sensed it only as it prepared to leap on his back. Mazirian sprang about to face the thing, which subsided again to sitting posture. It was a deodand, formed and featured like a handsome man, finely muscled, but with a dead black lusterless skin, and long slit eyes.
"Oh, Mazirian, you roam the woods far from home."
The black thing's soft voice rose through the glade. The deodand, Mazirian knew, craved his body for meat. How had the girl escaped? Her trail led directly past.
"I come seeking, deodand. Answer my questions, and I undertake to feed you much flesh."
The deodand's eyes glinted, flitting over Mazirian's body.
"You may in any event, Mazirian. Are you with powerful spells today?"
"I am. Tell me, how long has it been since the girl passed? Went she fast, slow, alone, or in company? Answer, and I give you meat at such time as you desire." The deodand's lips curled mockingly.
"Blind magician, she has not left the glade."
He pointed, and Mazirian followed the direction of the dead black arm. But he jumped back as the deodand sprang. From his mouth gushed the syllables of Fandale's gyrator spell. The deodand was jerked off his feet and flung high in the air, where he hung, whirling, high and low, faster and slower, up to the treetops, low to the ground. Mazirian watched with a half-smile. After a moment he brought the deodand low and caused the rotations to slacken. "Will you die quickly or slow?" asked Mazirian. "Help me and I kill you at once. Otherwise you shall rise high where the pelgrane fly." Fury and fear choked the deodand. "May dark Thiel spike your eyes. May Kran hold your living brain in acid." And it added such charges that Mazirian felt forced to mutter counter-curses. "Up then," said Mazirian at last with a wave of his hand. The black, sprawling body jerked high above the treetops to revolve slowly in the crimson bask of setting sun. In a moment, a mottled, bat-shaped thing with hooked snout swept close, and its beak tore the black leg before the crying deodand could kick it away. Another and another of the shapes flitted across the sun. "Down, Mazirian!" came the faint call. "I tell what I know!" Mazirian brought him close to earth. "She passed alone before you came. I made to attack her, but she repelled me with a handful of thiel dust. She went to the end of the glade and took the trail to the river. This trail leads also past the lair of Thrang. So she is lost, for he will sate himself on her till she dies." Mazirian rubbed his chin. "Had she spells with her?" "I know not. She will need strong magic to escape the demon Thrang." "Is there anything else to tell?" "Nothing." "Then you may die." And Mazirian caused the creature to revolve at ever greater speed, faster and faster, until there was only a blur. A strangled wailing came, and presently the deodand's frame parted. The head shot like a bullet far down the glade. Arms, legs, viscera flew in all directions. Mazirian went his way. At the end of the glade the trail led steeply down ledges of dark green serpentine to the river Durna. The sun had set and shade filled the valley. Mazirian gained the riverside and set off downstream toward a far shimmer known as Sanra water, the Lake of Dreams. An evil odor came to the air, a stink of putrescence and filth. Mazirian went ahead more cautiously, for the lair of Thrang, the ghoul bear, was near, and in the air was the feel of magic. Strong, brutal sorcery his own more subtle spells might not contain. The sound of voices reached him, the throaty tones of Thrang and gasping cries of terror. Mazirian stepped around the shoulder of rock, inspecting the origin of the sounds. Thrang's lair was an alcove in the rock, where a fetid pile of grass and skins served him for a couch. He had built a rude pen to cage 3 women, these wearing many bruises on their bodies and the effects of much horror on their faces. Thrang had taken them from the tribe that dwelt in silk-hung barges along the lake shore. Now they watched as he struggled to subdue the woman he had just captured. His round, gray man's face was contorted, and he tore away her jerkin with his human hands. But she held away the great, sweating body with an amazing dexterity. Mazirian's eyes narrowed. Magic. Magic. So he stood watching, considering how to destroy Thrang with no harm to the woman. But she spied him over Thrang's shoulder. "See," she panted, "Mazirian has come to kill you." Thrang twisted about. He saw Mazirian and came charging on all fours, venting roars of wild passion. Mazirian later wondered if the ghoul had cast some sort of spell, for a strange paralysis strove to bind his brain. Perhaps the spell lay in the sight of Thrang's raging gray-white face, the great arms thrust out to grasp. Mazirian shook off the spell, if such it were, and uttered a spell of his own, and all the valley was lit by streaming darts of fire, lashing in from all directions to split Thrang's blundering body in 1,000 places. This was the excellent prismatic spray, many-colored stabbing lines. Thrang was dead almost at once, purple blood flowing from countless holes where the radiant rain had pierced him. But Mazirian heeded little. The girl had fled. Mazirian saw her white form running along the river toward the lake and took up the chase, heedless of the piteous cries of the three women in the pen. The lake presently lay before him, a great sheet of water whose further rim was but dimly visible. Mazirian came down to the sandy shore and stood seeking across the dark face of Sanra water, the lake of dreams. Deep night, with only a verge of afterglow, ruled the sky, and stars glistened on the smooth surface. The water lay cool and still, tideless as all Earth's waters had been since the moon had departed the sky. Where was the woman? There, a pale white form quiet in the shadow across the river. Mazirian stood on the river bank, tall and commanding, a light breeze ruffling the cloak around his legs. "Ho, girl," he called. "It is I, Mazirian, who saved you from Thrang. Come close that I may speak to you."
"At this distance I hear you well, magician," she replied. "The closer I approach, the farther I must flee."
"Why then do you flee? Return with me, and you shall be mistress of many secrets and hold much power."
She laughed.
"If I wanted these, Mazirian, would I have fled so far?"
"Who are you, then, that you desire not the secrets of magic?"
"To you, Mazirian, I am nameless, lest you curse me. Now I go where you may not come."
She ran down the shore, waded slowly out till the water circled her waist, then sank out of sight. She was gone. Mazirian paused indecisively. It was not good to use so many spells and thus shear himself of power. What might exist below the lake? The sense of quiet magic was there, and though he was not at enmity with the lake lord, other beings might resent a trespass. However, when the figure of the girl did not break the surface, he uttered the charm of untiring nourishment and entered the cool waters. He plunged deep through the lake of dreams, and as he stood on the bottom, his lungs at ease by virtue of the charm, he marveled at the fey place he had come upon. Instead of blackness, a green light glowed everywhere, and the water was but little less clear than air. Plants undulated to the current, and with them moved the lake flowers, soft with blossoms of red, blue, and yellow. In and out swam large-eyed fish of many shapes. The bottom dropped by rocky steps to a wide plain, where trees of the underlake floated up from slender stalks to elaborate fronds and purple water fruits, and so till the misty wet distance veiled all. He saw the woman, a white water nymph now, her hair like dark fog. She half swam, half ran across the sandy floor of the water world, occasionally looking back over her shoulder. Mazirian came after, his cloak streaming out behind. He drew nearer to her, exulting. He must punish her for leading him so far. The ancient stone stairs below his workroom led deep, and at last opened into chambers that grew ever vaster as one went deeper. Mazirian had found a rusted cage in one of these chambers. A week or two locked in the blackness would curb her willfulness, and once he had dwindled a woman small as his thumb and kept her in a little glass bottle with 2 buzzing flies. A ruined white temple showed through the green. There were many columns, some toppled, some still upholding the pediment. The woman entered the great portico under the shadow of the architrave. Perhaps she was attempting to elude him. He must follow closely. The white body glimmered at the far end of the nave, swimming now over the rostrum and into a semicircular alcove behind. Mazirian followed as fast as he was able, half swimming, half walking through the solemn dimness. He peered across the murk. Smaller columns here precariously upheld a dome from which the keystone had dropped. A sudden fear smote him, then realization as he saw the flash of movement from above. On all sides the columns toppled in, and an avalanche of marble blocks tumbled at his head. He jumped frantically back. The commotion ceased. The white dust of the ancient mortar drifted away. On the pediment of the main temple the woman kneeled on slender knees, staring down to see how well she had killed Mazirian. She had failed. 2 columns, by sheerest luck, had crashed to either side of him, and a slab had protected his body from the blocks. He moved his head painfully. Through a chink in the tumbled marble, he could see the woman, leaning to discern his body. So she would kill him. He, Mazirian, who had already lived more years than he could easily reckon? So much more would she hate and fear him later. He called his charm, the spell of the omnipotent sphere. A film of force formed around his body, expanding to push aside all that resisted. When the marble ruins had been thrust back, he destroyed the sphere, regained his feet, and glared about for the woman. She was almost out of sight, behind a break of long purple kelp, climbing the slope to the shore. With all his power, he set out in pursuit. Tsayin dragged herself up on the beach. Still behind her came Mazirian the Magician, whose power had defeated each of her plans. The memory of his face passed before her, and she shivered. He must not take her now. Fatigue and despair slowed her feet. She had set out with but 2 spells, the charm of untiring nourishment, and a spell affording strength to her arms, the last permitting her to hold off Thrang and tumble the temple upon Mazirian. These were exhausted. She was bare of protection. But, on the other hand, Mazirian could have nothing left. Perhaps he was ignorant of the vampire weed. She ran up the slope and stood behind a patch of pale, wind-beaten grass, and now Mazirian came from the lake, a spare form visible against the shimmer of the water. She retreated, keeping the innocent patch of grass between them. If the grass failed, her mind quailed at the thought of what she must do. Mazirian strode into the grass. The sickly blades became sinewy fingers. They twined about his ankles, holding him in an unbreakable grip, while others sought to find his skin. So Mazirian chanted his last spell, the incantation of paralysis, and the vampire grass grew lax and slid limply to earth. Tsayin watched with dead hope. He was now close upon her, his cloak flapping behind. Had he no weakness? Did not his fibers ache? Did not his breath come short? She whirled and fled across the meadow, toward a grove of black trees. Her skin chilled at the deep shadows, the somber frames. But the thud of the magician's feet was loud. She plunged into the dread shade. Before all in the grove awoke, she must go as far as possible. Snap! A thong lashed at her. She continued to run. Another, and another. She fell. Another great whip and another beat at her. She staggered up and on, holding her arms before her face. Snap! The flails whistled through the air, and the last blow twisted her around. So she saw Mazirian. He fought. As the blows rained on him, he tried to seize the whips and break them, but they were supple and springy beyond his powers, and jerked away to beat at him again. Infuriated by his resistance, they concentrated on the unfortunate magician, who foamed and fought with transcendent fury, and Tsayin was permitted to crawl to the edge of the grove with her life. She looked back in awe at the expression of Mazirian's lust for life. He staggered about in a cloud of whips, his furious, obstinate figure dimly silhouetted. He weakened and tried to flee, and then he fell. The blows pelted at him, on his head, shoulders, the long legs. He tried to rise, but fell back. Tsayin closed her eyes in lassitude. She felt the blood oozing from her broken flesh. But the most vital mission yet remained. She reached her feet and reelingly set forth. For a long time, the thunder of many blows reached her ears. Mazirian's garden was surpassingly beautiful by night. The star blossoms spread wide, each of magic perfection, and the captive half-vegetable moths flew back and forth. Phosphorescent water lilies floated like charming faces on the pond, and the bush which Mazirian had brought from far Almery in the south tinctured the air with sweet, fruity perfume. Tsayin, weaving and gasping, now came groping through the garden. Certain of the flowers awoke and regarded her curiously. The half-animal hybrid sleepily chittered at her, thinking to recognize Mazirian's step. Faintly to be heard was the wistful music of the blue-cup flowers singing of ancient nights when a white moon swam the sky, and great storms and clouds and thunder ruled the seasons. Tsayin passed unheeding. She entered Mazirian's house, found the workroom where glowed the eternal yellow lamps. Mazirian's golden-haired vat thing sat up suddenly and stared at her with his beautiful, vacant eyes. She found Mazirian's keys in the cabinet and managed to claw open the trap door. Here she slumped to rest and let the pink gloom pass from her eyes. Visions began to come. Mazirian, tall and arrogant, stepping out to kill Thrang. The strange-hued flowers under the lake. Mazirian, his magic lost, fighting the whips. She was brought from the half-trance by the vat thing timidly fumbling with her hair. She shook herself awake, and half walked, half fell down the stairs. She unlocked the thrice-bound door, thrust it open with almost the last desperate urge of her body. She wandered in to clutch the pedestal where the glass-topped box stood, and Turgeon and the dragon were playing their desperate game. She flung the glass crashing to the floor, gently lifted Turgeon out, and set him down. The spell was disrupted by the touch of the rune at her wrist, and Turgeon became a man again. He looked aghast at the nearly unrecognizable Tsayin. She tried to smile up at him.
Turgeon, you are free.
And Mazirian?
He is dead.
She slumped wearily to the stone floor and lay limp. Turgeon surveyed her with an odd emotion in his eyes. Tsayin, dear creature of my mind, he whispered, more noble are you than I, who used the only life you knew for my freedom. He lifted her body in his arms. But I shall restore you to the vats. With your brain I build another Tsayin, as lovely as you. We go. He bore her up the stone stairs.